I caught sight of my boy's vehicle and opted to astonish him on his special day by concealing myself in the back with his present. Then he got in with a female who stated, "Your helpless matriarch won't be a nuisance for much longer." I was astounded when I recognized the individual next to him. If you're observing this, please subscribe and inform me of your location. My given name is Elizabeth Kennedy, but everyone calls me Liz. At the age of 72, I had imagined I had experienced an ample amount of treachery for one existence. I was mistaken. It was April 2nd, the 41st birthday of my son, Brandon. Cradled in my lap was his preferred red velvet pastry from the renowned Harrison's Bakehouse. I had been anticipating his arrival in his Ford sedan for over half an hour, beaming with glee at my cunning scheme. The unexpected celebratory visit was destined to be a complete triumph. Then I heard approaching footfalls, and I crouched down further behind the driver's seat, barely able to contain my profound exhilaration. The car door opened, and Brandon settled into the driver's seat. But instead of igniting the engine, he paused. Another door unlatched. "Are you certain about this?" a woman's voice inquired as she took her place in the passenger seat. I nearly gasped aloud. It was Miss Abigail Vance, his associate in the business. The very same Abigail I had helped him employ 3 years prior when I loaned him $40,000 to expand his digital consulting enterprise. "Absolutely," Brandon responded, his voice possessing a chill I had never encountered before. The old bird signed over everything to me after father passed away. Power of attorney, beneficiary alterations, the whole shebang. She was so appreciative for my assistance with the paperwork. My vital fluid turned to ice. "What paperwork? What alterations?" "And the residence?" Abigail probed. Brandon gave a low laugh, a sound that made my skin crawl. "It's already in my name. She's completely oblivious. I informed her it was merely updating the deed for fiscal purposes subsequent to Dad's passing." The cake container trembled within my grasp. My dwelling? The house my late husband Robert and I constructed together 5 decades ago? "Your pathetic matriarch won't be a problem for much longer," Abigail articulated, her voice dripping with contempt. "Once we're united in matrimony, we'll place her in the Serene Meadows Care Facility. She'll be thankful for the company." Married? My son was betrothed, and I had to find out by concealing myself in his automobile? "The care home fees will deplete whatever remains of her nest egg quite rapidly," Brandon continued in a matter-of-fact tone. "But that's no longer our concern." I pressed my hand to my mouth to stifle the scream. This was my son, my cherished offspring, who used to climb into bed with me during electrical storms. The child I had given up everything for after his father's passing 8 years ago. "What if she uncovers it?" Abigail inquired. "Abigail, she won't. Mom trusts me implicitly, always has. It makes this almost too simple." The engine started, and as they drove off to commemorate his special day, I remained in a state of stunned silence in the back, clutching the dessert for a son who was plotting to cast me aside like refuse. But Brandon had made one monumental blunder. He had severely underestimated his feeble, elderly mother. The 30-minute drive to whatever dining establishment they had selected felt like an eternity. I stayed concealed, my mind racing as I attempted to process what I had just overheard. When the vehicle finally came to a halt, I waited until they had walked away before slipping out and hailing a cab. Upon arriving home, I sat in my cooking area, gazing at the birthday pastry. The same cooking area where I had instructed Brandon on how to crack chicken eggs without getting shells everywhere, where I had assisted him with his assignments every evening throughout high school, where I had wept with him when his father passed on.
How could I have overlooked the indications? How had my dedicated son transformed into this stranger? The truth was, I hadn't overlooked them. I had simply opted to disregard them. It began right after Robert's memorial service. Brandon had been so accommodating, so solicitous. "Mom, allow me to handle the documents," he had said. "You're grieving. You shouldn't have to deal with these financial matters." I had been appreciative, overwhelmed by the loss and drowning in insurance papers, banking records, and legal files. I didn't comprehend. When Brandon proposed to assist in navigating it all, I had signed whatever he placed in front of me. "Just a formality, Mom. This grants me permission to manage things if you are ever incapable." That's how he had elucidated the power of attorney document. "We need to update the house deed for tax purposes now that Dad's gone." That's how he had described transferring my residence into his name. I had placed my complete trust in him, my brilliant, prosperous son who operated his own digital consulting enterprise. Why wouldn't I trust him? The signs had been present, however. The way he had ceased visiting unless he required something, how he had become evasive when I inquired about his personal life. The day I had mentioned wanting to update my last will and testament, and he had swiftly changed the topic. And Abigail, I should have seen through her feigned sweetness from the very beginning. The way she would captivate me when she was in need of something, then barely acknowledge my presence otherwise. I had even helped cover the expenses for her digital marketing certification courses. My phone chimed, startling me from my thoughts. Brandon's name appeared on the screen. "Hello, sweetheart," I answered, striving to maintain a steady voice. "Hey, Mom. My apologies for missing your earlier communication. Abigail and I were at a restaurant celebrating my birthday." The casual fabrication rolled off his tongue so effortlessly. "Oh, that's lovely, dear. How was it?" "Splendid. Listen, I wanted to discuss something with you. Can I come over tomorrow? There are some financial matters we need to talk about." My stomach lurched. "What kind of financial matters?" "Just a few updates to your accounts. Nothing major, but it's important we handle it promptly." "I'll bet it is," I contemplated. "Of course, sweetheart, whatever you believe is best." "Perfect. I'll be there around 10 o'clock. And Mom, don't be anxious about a thing, okay? I am taking care of everything." After he concluded the call, I sat in the growing gloom of my kitchen, a picture of Robert on the mantel, watching over me. My spouse had always been the wary one, the one who questioned people's intentions. I had been the trusting one, seeing the best in everyone. "Well, Robert, it appears you were correct to be concerned about people taking advantage of me." But Robert had also imparted me another lesson. When someone reveals to you who they truly are, believe them the first time. Brandon had just shown me precisely who he had become. Now it was time to figure out what I was going to do about it. I barely got any rest that night. Each time I closed my eyes, I could hear Abigail's voice. "Your pathetic mother won't be a problem much longer." By 6 a.m., I was up and prepared. If Brandon thought I was just some helpless old woman, he was about to discover otherwise. I might be 72, but I wasn't finished yet. My first stop was Harrison Bakehouse. Eleanor Harrison had been my companion for 30 years, ever since her daughter was in my 5th grade class. "Liz," she exclaimed when I entered. "Don't tell me Brandon didn't enjoy his red velvet cake. I made it extra special." "Actually, Eleanor, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely truthful." I leaned across the counter. "Eleanor, has Brandon ever been in here with a young woman, blonde, in her early 40s, very well put together?" Her expression shifted. "Well, yes, several times over the past year. They seem quite close." "How close?" She glanced around the empty bakery, then lowered her voice. Liz, they were holding hands, kissing. Last month they came in looking at wedding cakes. Wedding cakes. The confirmation hit me like a physical blow, but I kept my face neutral. Did he introduce her as his fiancée? I thought it was strange that you hadn't mentioned it, but I figured maybe it was a surprise or something. A surprise. That's one way to phrase it. Eleanor, I need you to promise me you won't mention this conversation to anyone. Can you do that? She nodded, concern creasing her features. Liz, is everything all right? It will be, I said, surprising myself with how much I believed it. My next destination was Capital National Bank, where I had been a client for 40 years. Mrs. Janet Carter, the branch manager, greeted me warmly. Mrs. Kennedy, how can I assist you today? Janet, I need to review all my accounts, every single one, and I need to know who has access to them. Her smile faltered slightly. Is there a problem? I hope not, but I need to be certain. What Janet showed me made my blood run cold. Brandon wasn't just on my accounts as a co-signer. According to the paperwork I apparently signed, he was the primary account holder. I was listed as a secondary party on my own bank accounts. When did this change occur? I asked, staring at documents that bore my signature but that I didn't remember signing. Let me check. It was about 2 years ago. You and Brandon came in together. You seemed a bit confused about the process, so Brandon explained everything. Confused. That's what they would call it when they eventually put me in the care facility, too. Poor old Liz, so confused about her finances. Janet, I need copies of everything. Every document, every signature card, every change made to these accounts in the past 5 years. Of course, Mrs. Kennedy. Is there something specific you're worried about? I thought about my conversation with Brandon, about his casual mention of financial things we needed to discuss, about wedding cakes and care homes, and how pathetic mothers eventually stop being a problem. Let's just say I'm suddenly very interested in understanding my financial situation. As she printed the documents, I came to a realization that should have scared me, but somehow didn't. I was completely at Brandon's mercy. He controlled my funds, my dwelling, probably my entire future. But Brandon had made one crucial error. He assumed I would remain unaware forever. Game on, sweetheart.
The documents Janet provided painted a horrifying picture. Over the past 2 years, Brandon had systematically stripped me of control over my own existence. My savings account, my checking account, even my certificate of deposit investments, all transferred to his primary control. But what truly made my hands tremble was the insurance paperwork. Robert's life insurance policy, the one that was supposed to provide for me for the rest of my life, had been changed. Brandon was now the sole beneficiary. I sat in my car in the bank parking lot, studying page after page of my own signature. Some I remembered signing. Most I didn't, but they all looked legitimate. My phone buzzed with a text from Brandon. Running a few minutes behind, Mom. See you at 10:30 instead. Perfect. That gave me extra time to prepare for our little financial discussion. At home, I spread all the documents across my dining room table. The same table where we had eaten birthday dinners and holiday meals, where Brandon used to do his homework while I graded papers, where Robert and I had planned our retirement. I called my old friend Carol Miller. If anyone would know how to handle this situation, it was Carol. She had been through her own family drama when her stepson tried to contest her husband's will. Liz, you sound strange. What's wrong? I told her everything. The overheard conversation, the bank documents, the power of attorney. I didn't remember giving him complete control, though. Oh, honey, Carol breathed when I finished. This is elder financial abuse. It's more common than people think. And sadly, it's usually family members. What can I do? First, you need a lawyer, someone who specializes in elder law. Second, you need to document everything. And third, you need to be very careful. If Brandon realizes you're onto him, he might accelerate his timeline. Accelerate how? The care home. Liz, once you're declared incompetent or moved to a care facility, it becomes much harder to challenge these arrangements. After Carol gave me the name of an attorney, I sat staring at Brandon's high school picture on my mantle. Honor roll student, Eagle Scout, business degree from the state university that Robert and I had sacrificed to pay for. When had my achieving, ambitious son become this calculating stranger? The doorbell rang at exactly 10:30. I quickly gathered the papers and locked them in Robert's old filing cabinet, then went to answer the door. "Hi, Mom." Brandon leaned down to kiss my cheek, and I had to force myself not to flinch. He looked handsome and successful in his navy suit, briefcase in hand, like he was conducting a business meeting, which I suppose he was. "Coffee, sweetheart?" I asked, leading him to the living room. "Sure, thanks." He settled into Robert's old chair and opened his briefcase. "So, I wanted to talk to you about some changes we need to make to your financial setup." "Oh." I sat across from him, hands folded in my lap, the picture of an agreeable elderly mother. "Your accounts are getting a bit complicated to manage. I think it would be simpler if we consolidated everything into one account that I handle completely. That way, you don't have to worry about balancing checkbooks or keeping track of multiple statements." Don't have to worry. How considerate of him. "And there's something else," he continued. "I and Abigail are getting married." I arranged my face into an expression of surprised delight. "Brandon, how wonderful! When?" "Next month. Small ceremony. Just immediate family." Immediate family. I wondered if that included me or if I had already been written off as too pathetic to matter. "We've been looking at houses," he continued, "and we found the perfect place, but we'll need to free up some capital for the down payment." Here it comes, I thought. "I was thinking we could sell this place. It's way too big for you now, and the maintenance costs are getting expensive. There's a lovely senior community across town, much more appropriate for someone your age." Someone my age. Not a care home yet, but getting closer. "I don't know, sweetheart," I said carefully. "This house has so many memories." Brandon's expression tightened, almost imperceptibly. "Mom, you need to be practical. You can't live here forever. What happens when you can't manage the stairs? When you need help with daily activities? I feel fine now. For now. But we need to plan for the future. Trust me, I know what's best." The arrogance in those 4 words took my breath away. I know what's best. Not what's best for me. What's best for him? "Well," I said slowly, "I suppose I should think about it." Something flickered across his face. Impatience. Frustration. "There's not much to think about, Mom. The housing market is good right now. If we wait too long, we might miss our opportunity." Our opportunity. As if selling my home was somehow a joint venture we were undertaking together. "Let me consider it for a few days." Brandon's jaw tightened. A few days might be too long. The house Abigail and I want to buy won't stay on the market forever. And there it was. The real timeline. Not my comfort or my needs, but Brandon and Abigail's house hunting schedule. "I understand, sweetheart, but this is a big decision." He snapped his briefcase shut, the sound sharp in the quiet room. "Fine, but don't wait too long, Mom. Sometimes opportunities don't come around twice." As I walked him to the door, I realized he was right about one thing. Opportunities don't come around twice, and he had just given me mine. After Brandon departed, I sat in Robert's chair and contacted the attorney Carol had suggested.
Attorney Patricia Webb specialized in elder law and had handled dozens of cases like mine. Mrs. Kennedy, based on what you're telling me, we need to act swiftly. Can you come in this afternoon? 2 hours later, I sat in Patricia's office, watching her review the bank documents with mounting concern. "This is sophisticated," she said finally. "Your son didn't just take advantage of your grief. He systematically planned this over a period of months. Is there anything I can do?" "Possibly. But first, I need to ask you some difficult questions. Do you remember signing these power of attorney documents?" I closed my eyes, thinking back to those terrible months after Robert's death. "Some of them. Brandon said I needed to sign papers so he could help manage things while I was grieving, but I don't remember giving him complete control." That's the problem with these situations. Predators often strike when their victims are most vulnerable. You were dealing with tremendous loss, and Brandon exploited that. The word predator made me flinch. We were talking about my son. What are my options? We can challenge the power of attorney documents, argue that you weren't competent to sign them due to grief and emotional distress. We can also file for elder abuse, both financial and emotional. But Mrs. Kennedy, you need to understand something important. What's that? Once we start this process, your relationship with Brandon will be permanently damaged. Family court cases like this destroy families. Are you prepared for that? I thought about the conversation I had overheard in the car, about Abigail calling me pathetic, about Brandon planning to put me in a care home, about how I wasn't supposed to be a problem much longer. Patricia, what relationship? He's already decided I don't matter. Then let's make sure you matter very much. Patricia explained the process. We would need to gather evidence, document his financial manipulations, and prove that I was competent to manage my own affairs. It would take weeks, maybe months. The most important thing right now is that Brandon doesn't realize you're on to him. Can you do that? Can you pretend everything is normal while we build our case? Could I? Could I smile and play the role of the trusting, naive mother while secretly documenting my son's betrayal? Mrs. Kennedy, are you all right? I looked up at Patricia, this stranger who was offering to help me fight for my life, and made a decision that would change everything. Yes, I can do that, but I need to ask you something first. Is it legal to record conversations in this state? Patricia smiled for the first time since I had arrived. Why do you ask? Because Brandon wants to have another financial discussion with me next week, and I think it would be very helpful if we had a record of exactly what he's planning to do to his pathetic old mother. Mrs. Kennedy, I think you're going to do just fine. As I drove home, I passed the care home Brandon had mentioned, Serene Meadows. I'd driven by it hundreds of times and never really looked at it. Now I studied the building. The small windows, the residents sitting on the porch in wheelchairs. Is that where Brandon pictured me spending my final years? Warehoused with strangers while he and Abigail lived in my house and spent my money? Not if I had anything to say about it. But first, I needed to have a conversation with Abigail. It was time to meet my future daughter-in-law properly.
Finding Abigail's address was easier than I expected. Brandon's digital consulting company website listed both partners, complete with professional headshots and contact information. Abigail Vance lived in a trendy downtown loft, the kind of place that cost more per month than I used to make in 6 months of teaching. I parked across the street and waited. Patricia had advised me to document everything, to build a complete picture of Brandon and Abigail's relationship and financial situation. If they were planning to steal my money, I wanted to know exactly how they were spending it. At 11:30 a.m., Abigail emerged wearing a designer workout outfit that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She climbed into a brand new BMW convertible and drove toward the upscale part of town. I followed her to the Prestige Fitness Center, where monthly memberships started at $400. She spent 2 hours there, then met a friend for lunch at Romano's, easily the most expensive restaurant in the city.
As I watched her laugh and order wine at noon on a Tuesday, I wondered where the money was coming from. Brandon's consulting firm was successful, but not luxury car and expensive lunch successful. Not unless he had additional income sources, like, for instance, access to his mother's life savings. That afternoon, I drove by the house Brandon and Abigail were supposedly looking to buy. The real estate sign was still up, and I copied down the agent's number. A quick call revealed that, yes, they were very interested buyers, but there had been some delays with financing. They're waiting on some family money to come through, the agent confided. Should be resolved within the next few weeks. Family money. My money. That evening, Brandon called to check in, his voice warm and concerned. "How are you feeling about our conversation yesterday, Mom? I've been thinking about what you said about selling the house." I took a deep breath and played my part. "You're right, sweetheart. This place is too big for me. Maybe it is time to downsize." The relief in his voice was unmistakable. "I'm so glad you're being reasonable about this. I was worried you might be stubborn." Stubborn. Like wanting to keep my own house with some kind of character defect. "When would you want to list it?" I asked. "Soon. I'll call a realtor tomorrow. We'll want to price it competitively for a quick sale." A quick sale, of course. Can't have me changing my mind or having time to think things through properly. "And Mom, I've been looking into that senior community I mentioned, Sunshine Gardens. They have a lovely one-bedroom available. I could take you to see it this weekend." Sunshine Gardens. I had looked it up online after our conversation yesterday. It was expensive, isolated, and had terrible reviews. Residents complained about poor food, indifferent staff, and feeling abandoned by their families. "That sounds nice, dear." "Perfect. And there's one more thing. I'll need you to sign some papers when I come over Friday, just to get the house sale process started." More papers to sign, more of my life to sign away. "Of course, sweetheart. Whatever you think is best." After he hung up, I sat in my kitchen making a list. Every lie Brandon had told, every manipulation, every document I had signed without fully understanding, every dollar he had moved out of my control. By the time I finished, it covered 3 pages. Robert's photo watched me from the mantel, and I could almost hear his voice. "Liz, that boy is not the son we raised." He was right. The son we had raised would never have stolen from his mother, would never have planned to abandon her in a substandard care home, would never have called her pathetic behind her back. But Brandon had made one critical error in his planning. He had assumed I would stay the same trusting, grieving widow who had signed whatever he put in front of her. Friday couldn't come soon enough. I was looking forward to our conversation about those papers, almost as much as I was looking forward to the conversation he didn't know we were going to have. Friday arrived with an unseasonable warmth for April. I had been awake since 5, checking and double-checking the recording device Patricia had provided. It was smaller than my thumb and completely invisible once tucked into my cardigan pocket. "Just press this button to start recording," she had explained during our Wednesday meeting. "The battery lasts 4 hours and the sound quality is excellent." At exactly 10 a.m., Brandon arrived, carrying his briefcase and wearing his most charming smile. "Morning, Mom. Beautiful day, isn't it?" "Lovely," I agreed, leading him to the dining room. "Coffee?" "Please." He settled into his usual chair and opened his briefcase with practiced efficiency. "I brought those papers I mentioned." I pressed the record button as I poured his coffee. "What kind of papers?" "Just some updates to your financial arrangements and the paperwork to list the house." He spread several documents across the table. "Sign here, here, and here." I picked up the first document, pretending to read it carefully. It was a power of attorney revision that would give Brandon even more control over my affairs. "This seems very comprehensive." "Very, honey. It needs to be. Mom, I have to be honest with you about something." His voice took on a serious tone. "I'm concerned about your memory. You've seemed confused lately about financial matters." Confused. There was that word again. Have I? Yesterday, when I called, you didn't remember our conversation about the realtor, and last week you asked me the same question 3 times. I hadn't done any of those things, but I could see where this was heading. Oh dear, I hadn't noticed. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It happens to people our age. But it's why we need to get these legal protections in place now while you're still competent to sign. While I'm still competent, the implication was clear. Soon, I wouldn't be. Brandon, can I ask you something? Of course. Are you stealing from me? The question hung in the air like smoke. Brandon's face went through several expressions before settling on wounded incredulity. Mom, how can you ask that after everything I've done for you? I went to the bank yesterday. Janet showed me my accounts. You've moved all my money into accounts where I'm not the primary holder. His jaw tightened. I explained this already. It's for your protection. Protection from what? From yourself. The mask slipped slightly, revealing something harder underneath. Mom, you're not thinking clearly anymore. Last month, you nearly got scammed by that phone call about your car warranty. If I hadn't been managing your finances, you could have lost everything. I had never received any such phone call, but Brandon's lie rolled off his tongue so smoothly, I almost admired the craftsmanship. And what about Abigail? What about her? Are you two engaged? We've discussed it. Why? I just think it's interesting that you're getting married, buying a house, and putting me in a nursing home all at the same time. Very convenient timing. Brandon set his coffee cup down carefully. Mom, no one is putting you anywhere. We're finding you a nice place where you'll be safe and have people to take care of you. Serene Meadows. It's a lovely facility, very well regarded. I called Serene Meadows yesterday. They had a waiting list, but Brandon Sullivan put down a deposit for a semi-private room. Move-in date, April 1st, 2 weeks away. When did you put down the deposit, Brandon? His face went completely still. What deposit? The deposit at Serene Meadows. For April 1st. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. When Brandon finally spoke, his voice was different, colder. How did you find out about that? Does it matter? He leaned forward, and for the first time in my life, I felt afraid of my own son. Mom, you're making this much harder than it needs to be. Making what harder? The transition. You can't live here anymore. You can't manage your own affairs. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be for everyone. Everyone, meaning him and Abigail. Brandon stood up abruptly. Abigail has nothing to do with this. Really? Because I followed her yesterday. Nice BMW, by the way. Expensive gym membership, too. Where's the money coming from, Brandon? The question hit its mark. Brandon's face flushed red. You followed her, Mom? That's stalking. That's exactly the kind of behavior that proves you need supervised care. I need supervised care because I discovered my son is stealing from me? I'm not stealing anything. He slammed his hand on the table, making me jump. This money was always going to be mine eventually. I'm just managing it more efficiently. There it was, the truth finally out in the open. Efficiently. Yes. Do you have any idea what it costs to take care of an elderly parent? The care home fees alone will eat through your savings in 3 years. This way, we preserve the family wealth while ensuring you get the care you need. Family wealth. My life savings had become family wealth that needed preserving. Brandon sat back down, his voice returning to its earlier reasonable tone. Mom, sign the papers. Let me handle everything. You won't have to worry about money or maintenance or any of it. I looked at my son, the stranger wearing Brandon's face, and felt something break inside my chest. Not my heart. That had already broken when I heard him call me pathetic in his car. This was something deeper. The final severing of the cord that had connected us since the day he was born. No, I said quietly. No what? No, I won't sign the papers. No, I won't sell my house. And no, I won't go quietly into that nursing home so you and Abigail can live off my money. Brandon's mask finally fell away completely. You don't have a choice, Mom. I already have power of attorney. I can declare you incompetent. Can you? Yes. And after your behavior today, stalking Abigail, making these paranoid accusations, I think that's exactly what I'll have to do. I smiled then, probably for the first time since this nightmare began. Brandon, honey, there's something you should know. What's that? I reached into my cardigan pocket and pulled out the recording device, still running. The color drained from his face. You can't do that. Actually, I can. Single-party consent state. Remember you taught me that when you studied business law? Brandon stared at the device like it was a snake. Mom, delete that recording right now. I don't think so. If you don't delete it, I'll have you declared incompetent tomorrow. Go ahead. Try it. I'll be interested to see how a judge reacts when they hear you admit to stealing my money for efficiency purposes. We stared at each other across the dining room table. 41 years of my motherhood dissolving into this moment of pure antagonism. Finally, Brandon gathered his papers and stood up. This isn't over, Mom. No, I agreed, still smiling. It's just getting started.
After Brandon left, I sat in my kitchen shaking, not from fear this time, but from adrenaline. I had stood up to him. I had fought back, and it felt incredible. I called Patricia immediately. Mrs. Kennedy, how did it go? I got everything. He admitted to stealing my money, to planning to put me in a care home, to already having power of attorney he plans to abuse. It's all on tape. Excellent. Can you come in Monday morning? We need to move quickly now that he knows you're aware of his plans. After hanging up, I realized Brandon was right about one thing. This was just getting started. If he was desperate enough to threaten me with incompetency proceedings, he wouldn't hesitate to escalate further. I needed allies, and I needed them fast. My first call was to Carol Miller. Carol, I need your help with something, and it might get complicated. Anything, Liz. What do you need? I need witnesses, people who can testify that I'm mentally competent, that I can manage my own affairs. Consider it done. I'll call Martha Thompson and Ann Bradley, too. We've all been friends for 40 years. Anyone who says you're incompetent will have to get through us first. My second call was harder. I dialed my sister Laura in Phoenix, the sister I hadn't spoken to in 3 years because of a silly argument over our father's china pattern. Liz, is that really you? Hi, Laura. I know it's been a while, but I need to tell you something important. I told her everything, the theft, the care home deposit, the recording. By the time I finished, Laura was crying. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. I always thought Brandon was too smooth, too charming, but I never imagined this. Laura, I might need you to come up here. If this goes to court, I'll need family support. I'll book a flight tonight. Liz? Yes? I'm proud of you for fighting back. Mom and Dad would be proud, too. That evening, I was making dinner when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Abigail standing on my porch, looking perfectly composed in her designer coat. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. Abigail, this is unexpected. Mrs. Kennedy, we need to talk. Do we? Marcus told me about your conversation today. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I almost laughed. What kind of misunderstanding? May I come in? It's chilly out here. Against my better judgment, I let her into my living room. She sat on my sofa like she owned it, which I supposed she thought she soon would. Mrs. Kennedy, Brandon is worried about you. We both are. How thoughtful. This paranoia, these accusations, they're not like you. Has your doctor mentioned anything about early-stage dementia? The audacity took my breath away.
Abigail, I know exactly what you and Brandon are planning. We're not planning anything except what's best for you. Her voice was honey sweet, but her eyes were calculating. Brandon loves you so much. It breaks his heart to see you struggling like this. Struggling with what exactly? With reality. Mrs. Kennedy, you followed me yesterday. You think Brandon is stealing from you. You're making recordings of private conversations. These are concerning behaviors. I studied this perfectly put together young woman who was trying to gaslight me in my own living room. Tell me something, Abigail. How long have you been planning this? What planning? The theft, the care home, taking over my life? Her mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold underneath. Mrs. Kennedy, I think you need help. I think you need to leave. She stood up, smoothing her coat. We're trying to be patient with you, but Brandon has responsibilities to his business, to our future together, to his family's financial security. His family's financial security? You mean my money? I mean the wise management of family assets for everyone's benefit. Everyone, meaning you and Brandon. Everyone, meaning the people who matter. The words slipped out before she could stop them. The people who matter, I repeated, and I don't matter? Abigail realized her mistake immediately. That's not what I meant. Yes, it is. That's exactly what you meant. She headed for the door, then turned back. Mrs. Kennedy, Brandon is going to take care of this situation with or without your cooperation. It would be easier for everyone if you just accept help gracefully. Is that a threat? It's advice from someone who cares about your well-being. After she left, I double-checked all my locks and called Patricia's emergency number. They're escalating, I told her. Abigail just tried to convince me I have dementia, and she basically threatened me. We need to accelerate our timeline. Can you be in my office first thing Monday morning? I'll be there, and Mrs. Kennedy, don't let them into your house again. If they're desperate enough to threaten you, there's no telling what they might do next. As I got ready for bed, I realized I wasn't the same person who had hidden in Brandon's back seat just 5 days ago. That woman had been trusting, naive, eager to please. This woman was done being anyone's victim. But I also realized that Brandon and Abigail weren't going to give up easily. They had invested too much time and effort into their plan to let it fall apart now, which meant I needed to be ready for whatever they threw at me next.
Monday morning brought in unseasonal snow, covering my driveway in a slick white blanket that made walking treacherous. Perfect weather for feeling like everything was sliding out from under me. I arrived at Patricia's office early, clutching a folder containing copies of every document Brandon had ever asked me to sign. My sister, Laura, sat in the waiting room, having flown in yesterday despite the weather warnings. "You look different," Laura observed as we waited. "Stronger somehow." "I feel different, like I'm finally waking up after a long sleep." Patricia's secretary called us back, and we settled into the attorney's comfortable office overlooking downtown. "I've reviewed the recording," Patricia began, "and it's even better than I hoped. Brandon essentially confessed to financial elder abuse. But there's something else we need to discuss." She pulled out a thick file. "I had my investigator run background checks on both Brandon and Abigail. What we found is interesting." "What kind of interesting?" "Brandon's business isn't as successful as he's led you to believe. In fact, he's been operating at a loss for the past 10 months. His partnership with Abigail has been propped up entirely by the money he's taken from your accounts." Laura leaned forward. "How much money are we talking about over the past 2 years?" "Nearly $250,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. $250,000? Robert and I had saved that money over 45 years of marriage. Every vacation we didn't take, every restaurant meal we skipped, every luxury we denied ourselves. There's more," Patricia continued.
Abigail Vance has an interesting history. She was married before to an elderly man named Mr. George Vance. He died 3 years ago under somewhat mysterious circumstances. Mysterious how? He changed his will 3 weeks before his death, leaving everything to Abigail instead of his children from his first marriage. His family contested it, claiming elder abuse, but Abigail settled out of court. Laura and I exchanged glances. "She's done this before," I said. "It appears so. And there's something else you should know. The house they want to buy, it's not some dream home for newlyweds. It's an investment property they plan to flip. They've already lined up contractors." I sat back in my chair, trying to process everything. So they steal my money, put me in a care home, flip a house with my savings, and live off the profits. That seems to be the plan. But, Mrs. Kennedy, we can stop them. The recording gives us grounds for criminal charges. The financial records show clear theft, and with Mr. Vance's suspicious death, we might be dealing with something much more serious. What do you mean? I mean, Abigail Vance might be a serial predator who targets vulnerable older adults, and you might not be her first victim. The room fell silent, except for the sound of snow hitting the windows. I thought about Abigail's cold eyes, her casual threats, the way she had tried to convince me I had dementia. "What's our next step?" I asked. "We filed charges immediately. Financial elder abuse, theft, possibly conspiracy. I'll also petition the court to freeze all your accounts that Brandon has access to." "And what about the care home?" "We'll get an injunction preventing them from having you committed involuntarily. But, Mrs. Kennedy, you need to understand something. Once we file these charges, there's no going back. This will destroy your relationship with Brandon permanently." I looked at Laura, who squeezed my hand supportively. Then I thought about the conversation I'd overheard in Brandon's car, about being called pathetic, about being seen as nothing more than a problem to be solved. "Patricia, that relationship was already destroyed. I just didn't know it yet. Then let's make sure justice is served." As we left the law office, Laura linked her arm through mine. "Liz, are you sure you're ready for this? Once those charges are filed, Brandon will know you mean business. I'm counting on it." But as we drove home through the thickening snow, I wondered if I really was ready for what came next. Because if Patricia was right about Abigail being a serial predator, then I wasn't just fighting for my money and my independence. I might be fighting for my life.
That evening, as Laura and I sat in my kitchen planning our strategy, the phone rang. Brandon's name appeared on the caller ID. "Answer it," Laura whispered. "Let's see what he has to say." I picked up the phone, putting it on speaker. "Hello, Brandon." "Mom!" His voice was tight, controlled. "We need to talk. I think we've said everything we need to say." "No, we haven't. I'm coming over." "I'd rather you didn't. I'm not asking for permission. Mom, I'm coming over and we're going to settle this like adults." The line went dead. Laura and I looked at each other. "Call Patricia," I said. "Tell her Brandon is on his way over and he sounds angry. Should we call the police?" I thought about it for a moment. "Not yet, but if he tries to force his way in, we will." 20 minutes later, headlights swept across my living room windows. But when I looked outside, I saw 2 cars in my driveway. Brandon and Abigail had come together, and they didn't look like they were here to apologize. The doorbell rang 3 times in rapid succession, followed by heavy knocking. I looked through the peephole to see Brandon and Abigail standing on my porch, both looking grim and determined. "Mrs. Kennedy," Brandon called out, "open the door. We know you're in there." Laura moved to the window and peeked through the curtains. "There's a 3rd person sitting in their car, a man I don't recognize." My blood ran cold. "Call Patricia now." Laura dialed while I continued watching through the peephole. Brandon was trying the door handle, checking to see if it was locked. "Mom!" His voice was louder now, more aggressive. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be. We're trying to help you."
"Mrs. Webb's office," Laura whispered into the phone. "This is an emergency." The knocking became pounding. "I know you can hear me, Mom. Open this door right now or I'm calling the police and having you taken in for a psychiatric evaluation." My hands shook as I realized what was happening. They weren't here to apologize or negotiate. They were here to finish what they had started. "Patricia's on her way," Laura whispered, hanging up the phone, "and she's bringing the police." "Mrs. Kennedy," Abigail's voice joined Brandon's, "we're here to help you. You're clearly having some kind of mental health crisis, and we're concerned for your safety." Mental health crisis. They were setting up their narrative for when the authorities arrived. The confused elderly woman who had barricaded herself in her house, making paranoid accusations against her loving son. "Open the door, or we're coming in," Brandon shouted. I heard the sound of a key in the lock. My heart stopped. Brandon still had his key to my house. The front door opened and suddenly they were inside my home, uninvited and unwelcome. "Mom!" Brandon called out, his voice echoing through the house. "Where are you? We're here to help you." Laura and I pressed ourselves against the kitchen wall, trying to stay hidden. I could hear their footsteps moving through my living room, searching for me. "Check upstairs," Abigail's voice directed. "She might be hiding." Hiding like I was some kind of criminal in my own home? "Mrs. Kennedy," a third voice called out, unfamiliar and official sounding. "My name is Dr. Jonathan Hayes. I'm here to evaluate your mental state." A doctor? They had brought a doctor to declare me incompetent? "She's paranoid," Brandon was explaining loudly, clearly for our benefit. "Making wild accusations about theft, following people, recording private conversations, classic signs of dementia-related paranoia." "I see," the doctor replied. "Has she been evaluated recently?" "She refuses to see her regular physician, claims everyone is conspiring against her." Laura gripped my arm, her eyes wide with fear. They were building their case in real time, creating a narrative that would justify whatever they planned to do next. Footsteps approached the kitchen. "I found them," Brandon called out. I stepped out from behind the wall, Laura beside me. "Get out of my house." Brandon held up his hands in a gesture of false calm. "Mom, please, we're here to help you." I said, "Get out." The third man stepped forward. He was middle-aged, professional-looking, carrying a leather bag. "Mrs. Kennedy, I'm Dr. Hayes. Your son is concerned about your mental state." "My mental state is fine. What's not fine is my son stealing my money and planning to put me in a care home against my will." Dr. Hayes exchanged glances with Brandon. "Mrs. Kennedy, these are serious accusations. Do you have any proof?" I almost laughed. "As a matter of fact, I do." I pulled out the recording device and pressed play. Brandon's voice filled the kitchen. "This money was always going to be mine eventually. I'm just managing it more efficiently." Dr. Hayes' expression changed. "Mr. Sullivan, is this your voice on the recording?" Brandon's face flushed red. "She's been recording private conversations without consent. That's illegal wiretapping." "Actually, it's not," I replied. "Single-party consent state. Remember? You taught me that." Abigail stepped forward, her voice honey-sweet. "Dr. Hayes, you can see how paranoid she's become, recording family conversations, making these bizarre accusations." "The accusations aren't bizarre if they're true," Laura interjected, speaking up for the first time. "And I have documents proving everything she said." Dr. Hayes looked around the kitchen, taking in the tension, the fear, the obvious family dysfunction. "Perhaps we should all sit down and discuss this calmly." "There's nothing to discuss," I said firmly. "These people broke into my house. I want them to leave immediately." That's when I heard the sirens outside. Brandon's face went pale. "What did you do?" I called my attorney and the police. The sound of car doors slamming echoed from my driveway, followed by heavy footsteps on my porch. A loud knock rattled the front door. "Police! Open up!" Brandon, Abigail, and Dr. Hayes exchanged panicked looks. Their carefully planned intervention had just become a crime scene. "Mrs. Kennedy!" A loud voice called from the front door. "This is Officer Rodriguez. We received a call about a break-in." I walked to the front door, Laura right behind me, leaving Brandon, Abigail, and their fake doctor standing in my kitchen like the criminals they were. When I opened the door, I saw Patricia standing behind two uniformed police officers, her expression grimly satisfied. "Mrs. Kennedy," Officer Rodriguez said, "are you all right? We received reports of forced entry." I looked back toward the kitchen where Brandon was probably trying to figure out how to spin this situation in his favor. "Officer," I said, "I'd like to file charges against my son for breaking and entering, financial elder abuse, and conspiracy to commit fraud." "Mom," Brandon's voice called out desperately from the kitchen, "you don't know what you're doing." I smiled for the first time since this nightmare began. Actually, Brandon, for the first time in 8 years, I know exactly what I'm doing. The look on his face when the officers walked into the kitchen made every terrifying moment of the past week worth it. Justice, it seemed, was about to be served. 6 months later, I stood in my garden watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. The same garden Brandon had planned to abandon when he sold my house. The same house where I still lived, still independent, still free.
The legal battle had been swept once the evidence mounted. Brandon pleaded guilty to financial elder abuse in exchange for a reduced sentence, 2 years probation, full restitution, and a restraining order that prohibited him from contacting me. Abigail's case was more complex. Patricia's investigator had uncovered evidence linking her to 3 other elderly victims besides Mr. Vance. She was currently awaiting trial on multiple charges of elder abuse, fraud, and conspiracy. The fake Dr. Hayes turned out to be her cousin, a disgraced former physician who had lost his license for insurance fraud. I took a sip of my coffee and checked my phone. Laura had sent photos from her new apartment. After everything that happened, she had decided to move back east to be closer to me. "Life's too short to hold grudges," she had said when she arrived with a moving truck 3 months ago. My phone rang. Carol Miller's name appeared on the screen. "Morning, Liz. Are you ready for our big day?" Today was the grand opening of the Elizabeth Kennedy Community Garden, a project I had funded with part of the restitution money Brandon had been forced to pay back. The irony wasn't lost on me that his theft had inadvertently funded something that would help seniors in our community for years to come. "Almost ready. Laura's coming by at 9 to help set up." "I still can't believe you named it after yourself." I laughed. "Carol, I spent 70 years putting everyone else's name first. I figured it was time." After hanging up, I walked through my house, straightening things for the celebration later. In the dining room, I paused at the family photos on the mantle. Most featured Brandon at various ages. I had taken them down after the trial, unable to look at his smiling face without remembering his betrayal. But last week, I had put up a new photo. It showed me at the community garden groundbreaking, surrounded by friends and neighbors, holding a shovel and grinning like a kid. I looked happy, genuinely happy. Maybe for the first time since Robert died. The doorbell rang at exactly 9. Laura stood on my porch carrying a box of decorations and wearing the biggest smile I had seen in years. "Ready to celebrate your victory?" she asked, giving me a hug. "It doesn't feel like a victory," I replied honestly. "It feels like survival." "Same thing sometimes." We spent the morning setting up tables and hanging banners at the community garden site. By noon, dozens of neighbors had gathered to celebrate. Mayor Thompson gave a speech about the importance of community spaces. The local newspaper took photos. Children ran between the raised beds, already imagining the vegetables they would grow. As I watched the celebration, I thought about the woman I had been 6 months ago. Trusting, passive, eager to please, always putting everyone else's needs first, even when it cost me everything. That woman would have been horrified by what I had done to Brandon, would have felt guilty about sending her own son to court, about exposing his crimes, about destroying the fiction that we were a happy, functional family. This woman felt proud. "Mrs. Kennedy," a young voice interrupted my thoughts. I turned to see Sarah Patterson, a 9-year-old from the neighborhood, holding a small potted plant. "I brought you this. My mom says it's for your garden." I knelt down to her level. "What kind of plant is it?" "It's a sunflower. Mom says they're strong and they always face the light." Always face the light. I felt tears prick my eyes. "Thank you, Sarah. It's perfect." As the afternoon wound down and neighbors began heading home, I found myself alone in the garden for a few minutes. I walked between the raised beds, imagining them full of vegetables and flowers, imagining the community that would grow here along with the plants. My phone buzzed with the text from an unknown number. For a moment, my heart raced, wondering if Brandon was violating his restraining order. But the message was from someone entirely. "Mrs. Kennedy, this is Detective Morrison from the county prosecutor's office. Abigail Vance accepted a plea deal today. 15 years, no possibility of parole for 12. Thought you'd want to know. Your courage in coming forward helped us save other potential victims." I sat down on one of the garden benches and read the message again. 15 years. Abigail would be in her 50s when she got out, too old to prey on vulnerable seniors with the same efficiency, and other potential victims had been saved because I had found the courage to fight back. Laura appeared beside me, noticing my expression. "Good news or bad news?" "Justice," I replied, showing her the text. "How do you feel?" I considered the question. How did I feel? Relieved, certainly, vindicated, but also something else, something I hadn't felt in years. "Proud," I said finally. "I feel proud of myself." "You should. You saved your own life, Liz, and probably saved other people's lives too." As we walked back to my house, I thought about the conversation I had overheard in Brandon's car 6 months ago, about being pathetic, about not being a problem much longer, about being warehoused in a care home while my son and his partner spent my money. That version of my future seemed so inevitable then, so final. But I had learned something important over the past 6 months. As long as you're breathing, you get to write your own story. And my story was far from over. At 73 years old, I was finally living my own life on my own terms. I had a community garden bearing my name, friends who valued me for who I was rather than what I could give them, and a sister who had moved across the country just to be near me. Most importantly, I had myself, the woman I had become through surviving the worst betrayal imaginable, the woman who had faced down criminals and predators and won. The woman who had learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to be a victim. As I locked my front door that evening, I smiled at the thought of Brandon, somewhere trying to rebuild his life, hopefully learning that stealing from your mother has consequences. And I smiled at the thought of Abigail in prison, unable to hurt any more vulnerable seniors. But mostly, I smiled because tomorrow I would wake up in my own house, in my own bed, living my own life. And that was the greatest victory of all. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.